Hey everybody, today I wanted to bring you the top 5 up-and-coming recessive morphs in my opinion. I'm basing this on some research which I'll get into here as well. Before I get started, we have a show this weekend on Saturday and Sunday at the Valparaiso Armory. If you're in the area, we'd love to see you. It's always fun doing these shows, and it's been a bit because they always take a break during December. This will be the first one since November. With that, let's get into our list of the top 5 recessive morphs that seem to be poised to take the market by storm. One thing that I want to make very clear, this is for up-and-coming morphs. The criteria that I chose for up-and-coming means that it's not already established. This is stuff that's ground level for recessives, meaning that they're usually a little up there in price. It also means that a low amount of combos have been worked, but yet there's a high amount of interest in the project. At number 5 on our list is the puzzle ball pythons. Puzzle is honestly pretty self-explanatory. They look like little teeny puzzle pieces. They are known to kind of brighten the snake a little bit, but it's mostly a pattern disruption type of morph. This is a morph that honestly shines quite a bit better when it's in a combo. Anytime you can change the pattern on a snake, that's pretty impressive. Color and pattern are the things you're trying to change the most of, obviously, but then you're also trying to tweak the contrasts. Just to show a quick example of one of the combos here, we have a hypo pastel puzzle female. You can see it almost the colors when you put the pastel, it does change the coloring a little bit. This picture here almost looks kind of like ultramel or something like that in a way too, but the pattern obviously is very different. It's just kind of a bunch of little craziness, little teeny puzzle pieces or little letters or such like that. It's a really cool morph if you're trying to change your pattern up. It will do that very easily. I don't think I've seen a puzzle that's low expression yet. Sometimes you can get something that does a lot of pattern disruption, like Enchi, for example, and it can be a low expression Enchi. Puzzle doesn't seem to do that. It does some pretty unique things, and it doesn't really lessen the pattern. It just kind of just throws it all over the place. So really cool morph. I think that it's certainly got a lot that can be done with it still. At number 4 on our list is the paint ball pythons. Paint also is a pattern disruption, but it is a more dirty version of it. Puzzle is a pretty clean one. Paint is a little bit more dirty. It changes up the pattern quite a bit in a more blotchy type way. I'd say that they're kind of polar opposites of each other, but the paint pattern is pretty highly variable. It's named that because it honestly just looks like someone threw paint on them. This can create a lot of pixelated pattern, so it's a different thing to work with. Taking a look at some of the examples of a combo of paint, you just have something simple here with yellow belly paint. It kind of almost just looks like a highway or a super asphalt. Yellow belly is kind of a more subtle morph, but it seems to react pretty well with paint, just bringing in these nice neon flaming colors onto it. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of like a super asphalt, just a little bit, almost like those type of highway type things, just with one copy of yellow belly, which normally doesn't show at all, but when combined with paint, it looks great. Kind of the same thing with pastel paint. You've got a lot of these nice oranges and yellows and blacks on it that just mesh together incredibly well. So certainly paint is something that I, again, feel has a lot of work that it can be put into it. It's just a matter of taming or putting that muddied pixelation to work for you rather than against you. At number 3, we have the Monarch ball python. Monarch is a T+ albinism morph. So what is that? It certainly doesn't have red eyes. It's not an albino, right? A lot of people, when they think of albinism, they think of the yellow and white snake with red eyes, and that's certainly the most popular known one. But albinism is any form that kind of lacks darker pigments. It's anything that lacks the melanin that would normally be present in the snake. This kind of creates a much different colored snake. Where Monarch stands out there is that normally you'd lose these dark pigments and stuff, but this one kind of keeps it there anyway. You kind of get a little bit of a different flavor of albino. You kind of get something here that seemingly keeps a bit of a dark mahogany or chocolatey type look to it, and kind of brings a almost caramel, for lack of a better term, look to its pattern. So this is a snake that right off the bat with just one gene has a lot of contrast to it, which I've always said I really like contrast, and this does it with just the visual Monarch, really. But when you combine it with pastel, it's outstanding. You get that same kind of dark chocolatey mahogany pattern, but then it's with a bright popping yellow. And these seemingly hold their colors pretty well as an adult. And I don't think anybody's done a Monarch DG yet, but man, a Monarch DG pastel, that would be really, really stunning. Monarch is compared a lot to Ultramel, but I think that there's a lot of subtle differences. Certainly, others have shown off what they look like, especially aging as adults, and I think think that the Monarch, in my opinion, ages a little better, but it's not just a off-tone kind of yellow and lavender or orange or anything like that. This color is almost like a deep wood, like mahogany, which I think is what makes it kind of stand out. I think that this is what makes this one of the better ones, if not the best T+ albinism form. Probably the coolest combo that I've seen is the Monarch Clown. I saw this on a recent video of Canova's. That is an outstanding example of what you can do with this animal. At this point, I think Monarch's really one that a lot of people should keep their eyes on. I'm on the fence between a few of them, and Monarch is right at the top of that list with a few of the other ones that I'm about to mention. At number 2 is Sunset. Sunset is a bright orange snake that looks like it was burnt by the sun in a way. They have a very rusty look to them, which is why they get a lot of attention. Reds in ball pythons are chased after like no other. I don't know for sure, but I just don't see a true fire truck red or any reds like that, but you get pretty close with some of these rusty reds. The issue with Sunset is that they brown out as adults, but again, there's ways to combat that. There's ways to put those into combos, and that's why I love them. Every ball python changes as they grow for the most part. You got to know that getting into it. Some people are trying to argue that the end product on the Sunset is not beautiful. I don't agree with that. They are getting a little bit more produced than you'd think. You can get hets at decently reasonable price now. You can get a pair of hets for honestly probably under 1,500 bucks. The trick here is that working it with other genes. Enchi is a really big one. Yellow belly is a really big one. Things that bring in those yellows. I think that Desert Ghost is where we're gonna want to get Sunset. People say that it browns out. Well, Desert Ghost holds their colors beautifully. There are a lot of really good examples of good Sunset morphs. Our number 2 from our last Tinley show of the top 5 ball pythons was a banana leopard butter Sunset, and it might be het pied. They had a lot of people asking if this was a monsoon. You can create a lot of cool stuff, but look how much more bright this Sunset is. It doesn't have as much of a burnt out look. So my theory is that this snake isn't going to brown out like all of the other Sunsets are said to do. I think that Sunset and Desert Ghost, however, have a destiny to meet each other. I would love to see that. Before I get to the last one, I did want to mention a couple honorable mentions that find themselves on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of where they're at in the ball python market. The first honorable mention I'd like to get into is Ultramel, which is, I already mentioned, very similar to Monarch. Why is it an honorable mention? Well, it's just got a lot more work into it. It's right on the cusp of being established versus not being established. You can pick up breeders for under 1,000, I think now. Ultramel is outstanding and it looks great. I just think it's got a lot more work put into it. Again, it's another form of T+ albinism that brings in a lot of caramel coloring and a little bit more of a darker background. As adults, this seems to kind of mellow out a little bit, but it still holds its colors pretty good. The other honorable mention would be Zebra. Zebra is named, well, because of the stripe patterns. It looks kind of almost like zebra stripes. But I almost like to think of it almost like a zigzag zipper. What I really think is so cool about the zebras, if you look at their back pattern, sometimes it doesn't seem to match up. It's almost like it's off center, and it's directly middle of the snake. So right on its spine, it's almost like the pattern reset. It's almost like, hey, it's just a little bit more off, and it might not even match to what it's butted up against. It might suddenly change from like a bigger pattern to something that's like slightly more down and abruptly change. So I think it's cool, but it has very little work into it. So I don't know if it's gonna take off just yet. It certainly has the potential to, but it's so low ground that I didn't wanna put it on a top 5 just yet. This is something that if you wanna get in on the actual ground floor, you'd be working with probably a list of 5, maybe 10 breeders. I don't know for sure, obviously, but not many breeders, and they'd all be huge names. But again, prepare to spend about 10 grand. And at number 1, Monsoon. Monsoon is probably the highest costing snake out there right now just by itself. It's certainly well sought after. A lot of people would like to work this. The cheapest het for a male that I can find is 2 grand. Now those prices will start to come down, just like everything does as more people work with them, as they become a little bit more available. By itself, Monsoon lives up to the name. It looks like a bunch of raindrops. It just screams jungle python. The Monsoon might be one of the most exotic looking snakes, especially for ball pythons. It's just crazy and all over the place. Monsoons have a lot of work that needs to be done with them. There is some cons though that I can think of. The pattern is so intense that you almost wonder where can you go from there. Coloring, for sure, you can get colors into this. I'd love to see this actually with Monarch. I'd love to see a clown of this, even though clown is a lot of pattern too, but to get the head stamp in there, I'm sure it would still do something to it. I think one of my favorite examples of a Monsoon combo so far is this Inchy Mojave Monsoon. Again, it's just got the whole 9 yards in it. It's got these nice yellows, it's got some flaming whites on the bottom, it's got this kind of nice caramelized brown to it, almost like a reddish in a way too, like a reddish brown. I really think this is just an outstanding morph, and like I said, this is just the basics of it. We still need to start looking at some double recessives. I still think it's got a really bright future though, and it certainly has a lot of mystique to it. You don't see them all that often, but it is probably one of the most intense ball python morphs that I've ever seen, especially for just one gene. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and you want to check out some of our other videos, you can check out some of our other top 5 lists right here.